The Galactic Council burst into mocking laughter at the mere idea of allowing lowly humans to join, until the human ambassador revealed the time machine. Then utter chaos and fear erupted. In the year 2257, the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council echoed with derisive snickers and sneers as human diplomat Edward Coleman strode in. He knew convincing this congress of haughty alien races to admit humanity would be an uphill battle. Whispers of primitive apes and warlike savages followed his every step. "The humans dare petition us for membership," the insectoid Zorgon delegate scoffed openly. "They've barely crawled out of their caves. What could those uncivilized brutes possibly offer?" The Zorgon's multifaceted eyes glittered with cruel amusement. Edward gritted his teeth, refusing to let the alien's contempt shake him. He had to succeed. Earth's survival depended on it. As the regal Vidian Sire-Father called the session to order, his tone dripped condescension. "Very well, let us hear the human's plea. This should be most entertaining." Scattered chuckles broke out among the assembled delegates. Edward stood tall before the mocking throng. He spoke passionately of humanity's tireless innovation, indomitable spirit, and unparalleled adaptability that had carried them to the stars. But his words fell on deaf ears. The council members traded bored glances and yawns, utterly unimpressed. Then Edward played his trump card. He held up a small metallic device, and the chamber fell silent. "Behold the key to humanity's ascension," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "We have created a time machine." Gasps of shock and outrage erupted. Pandemonium reigned. The Sire-Father's eyes bulged with disbelief and fear. Time travel was the ultimate forbidden technology. "Impossible, you lie!" the Zorgon shrieked, leaping to its feet. But Edward just smiled, knowing he now held the Council's undivided attention. Humanity's secret was out. Now the question remained, would the Council embrace humans as equals or seek to destroy them before they became the ultimate power in the galaxy? The fate of Earth and the future itself hung in the balance. Edward's revelation hangs heavy in the air, the Galactic Council chamber caught in a stunned silence. The Sire-Father leans forward in his seat, his eyes narrowing to slits as he processes the human's words. His fingers steeple under his chin, the purple stain on his collar now a glaring testament to Edward's claims. "How you play a dangerous game, human," the Sire-Father says finally, his voice low and menacing. "Revealing secrets, disrupting the delicate balance of power in this chamber. One might think you're trying to manipulate us." Edward shakes his head, meeting the Sire-Father's gaze head-on. "Manipulation was never my intent, Sire-Father. I only seek to prove the authenticity of our technology and our intentions. We come to you in good faith, hoping to forge a new era of cooperation and progress." The Zorgon delegate slams a clawed fist on their console, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Good faith," they snarl, multifaceted eyes flashing with rage. "You spy on private conversations, expose our dealings, and then claim good faith? This is an act of war." Murmurs of agreement ripple through the chamber, the tension rising to a palpable level. The Cluvian delegate, their face a mask of embarrassment and fear, remains tellingly silent. Edward raises his hands in a placating gesture. "Please, let us not be hasty. War is the last thing we want. Our technology, in the right hands, could be used to prevent conflicts, to right historical wrongs, to save countless lives. We only wish to be partners in shaping a better future for all sentient beings." The Sire-Father leans back in his seat, his expression unreadable. "And what assurances do we have that you will use this power responsibly, that you won't abuse it for your own gain?" Edward takes a deep breath, knowing his next words could determine the fate of not just humanity, but the entire galaxy. "I propose a treaty, a binding agreement between Earth and the Galactic Council. We will share our time travel technology, but its use will be strictly regulated and overseen by a joint committee of human and council representatives. Every mission, every alteration to the timeline must be approved by this committee. We will work together as equals to ensure that this power is never abused." The chamber falls silent once more, the weight of Edward's proposal sinking in. The Sire-Father exchanges glances with the other delegates, unspoken communication passing between them. "Your proposal is intriguing," the Sire-Father admits grudgingly. "But it requires further discussion. This council will adjourn to deliberate. You," he points a long, bony finger at Edward, "will remain under guard here. If this is some trick, if you attempt to use your device to escape or manipulate events further, you will be immediately terminated. Is that understood?" Edward nods solemnly, his hand tightening around the time-travel device. "Perfectly, Sire-Father." With a wave of his hand, the Sire-Father summons a contingent of armed guards, their weapons trained on Edward. The delegates rise from their seats, filing out of the chamber in a tense, murmuring mass. As the heavy doors slam shut, leaving Edward alone with his guards, he can't help but wonder if he's made the right choice. The fate of Earth, of the entire galaxy, now hangs on the decision of a group of aliens who, just hours ago, had viewed humanity as little more than primitives. But there is no turning back now. The die is cast, and the future, for better or worse, will be shaped by the choices made in the coming hours. All Edward can do is wait, hope, and trust that the better angels of the Council's nature will prevail. Hours drag by as Edward paces the confines of his sparse cell, the weight of his actions bearing down on him. The metallic walls seem to close in, a suffocating reminder of the precarious position he's placed himself and all of humanity in. His mind races, trying to predict the Council's next move, but the possibilities are endless and the uncertainty is maddening. Suddenly the cell door hisses open, and General Zaxxon strides in, flanked by 2 armed guards. Edward tenses, preparing for the worst, but Zaxxon merely gestures for him to follow. "The Sire-Father and the Council have reached a decision," Zaxxon says, his voice betraying no emotion. "Your presence is required." Edward nods, his heart pounding as he's led through the winding corridors once more. The journey seems to take an eternity, each step bringing him closer to a fate he can't begin to predict. Finally, they reach the council chamber. The room is eerily silent, the delegates seated in their designated spots, their expressions unreadable. Edward is brought to the center of the room, the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon him. The Sire-Father rises, his robes flowing around him as he approaches Edward. "The council has deliberated," he begins, his voice echoing through the chamber, "and we have reached a decision regarding the fate of humanity and your device." Edward holds his breath, his entire body tense with anticipation. "We cannot ignore the potential of such technology," the Sire-Father continues, "but neither can we trust it in the hands of a single species, especially one as young and unpredictable as humanity." Edward opens his mouth to protest, but the Sire-Father silences him with a raised hand. "Therefore we have decided that the time-travel device will remain in the custody of the Council, to be studied and utilized under strict supervision. A special committee, composed of representatives from each species, will be formed to oversee its use and ensure that it is not abused." Edward's heart sinks. He had hoped to keep the device under human control, to use it to benefit his species and prove their worth to the galaxy. "As for you, Edward Coleman," the Sire-Father fixes him with a piercing stare, "you will be appointed as humanity's representative on this committee. Your knowledge of the device and your role in its creation make you uniquely qualified for this position." Edward blinks in surprise, hardly believing what he's hearing. "However," the Sire-Father's voice takes on a harder edge, "this is not a reward for your actions, but a test. Your conduct and decisions as part of this committee will determine the future of your species' role in the galactic community. Any misstep, any hint of betrayal or misuse of this technology, and the consequences will be severe." Edward nods solemnly, the weight of this responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I understand, Sire-Father. I will not let you or humanity down." The Sire-Father studies him for a long moment, as if trying to peer into his very soul. Finally he nods. "See that you don't, Mr. Coleman. The galaxy will be watching." With that, the guards escort Edward out of the chamber, his mind reeling with the implications of what has just transpired. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rests in his hands. As the hours drag into days, the walls of Edward's cell close in around him, a suffocating reminder of his precarious position. He paces the small room, his mind churning with endless possibilities. The Council could destroy the time machine, erasing humanity's greatest achievement. Or worse, they could use it for their own gain, leaving Earth in the cosmic dust. Suddenly the door hisses open, and General Zaxxon strides in, 2 armed guards at his back. Edward tenses, preparing for the worst. "Mr. Coleman, you are to come with us," Zaxxon says, his voice grave. "The Council has reached a decision." Edward's heart pounds as he follows Zaxxon through the winding corridors. The building buzzes with strange commotion. Delegates and officials hurry past, their faces etched with worry and fear. Something big has happened. They burst into the council chamber, and Edward stops short, shocked by the scene of utter chaos. Delegates shout and argue, some even coming to blows. The Sire Father, looking haggard and strained, tries in vain to restore order. Zaxxon leads Edward to the center of the room, where a large holographic display shows a news broadcast. A green-skinned Zorgan reporter speaks rapidly, her voice tinged with panic. The confirmed reports of a massive Cluvian fleet, numbering in the thousands of ships, entering Zorgon space. The Cluvians have issued no statement, but their intentions are clear. This is an invasion, a blatant act of war. The chamber erupts into fresh chaos, accusations and threats flying. The Sire Father's voice booms over the din, calling for silence. "This is precisely what we feared," he says, eyes fixed on Edward. "The time machine has already been used to alter history, to give the Cluvians an advantage they never had before. And now, the galaxy teeters on the brink of total war." Edward shakes his head, his mind reeling. "No, this isn't right. The Cluvians and Zorgons were on the verge of a peace treaty. I saw it in the historical records. Something else must have changed, something we're not seeing." The Sire Father's eyes narrow. "And how can we trust those records or anything else, now that history itself is in flux? For all we know, you humans could be behind this, using the time machine to sow chaos and weaken your rivals." Frustration boiling over, Edward slams his fist on the table. "Damn it, Sire Father, listen to me. This is exactly why we developed the time machine in the first place, to prevent wars, to save lives. Let me use it to go back, to find out what really happened, and set things right." The Sire Father hesitates, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. "And what if you make things worse? What if you change history in ways we can't even imagine?" Edward meets the Sire Father's gaze, eyes blazing with determination. "I'll take that risk because the alternative is unthinkable. If we do nothing, if we let fear and paranoia rule us, then we're no better than the tyrants and conquerors of old. We have to be better than that. We have to try." The chamber hangs on the Sire Father's every word. Finally he nods. "Very well, but you will not go alone. General Zaxxon will accompany you, to ensure that you do not abuse this power." Relief floods through Edward. "Understood. Let's go save the galaxy." Zaxxon leads Edward out of the chamber to the secure vault housing the time machine. He places his hand on a biometric scanner, and the massive door slides open with a hiss, revealing the sleek, metallic device within. Edward takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the monumental task ahead. "Remember, we must tread carefully," Zaxxon warns as they step into the time machine. "Every action, every change, could have unforeseen consequences." Edward nods, his hand hovering over the activation panel. "I know, but we have to try. For the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of peace, we have to try." With a final determined breath, Edward inputs the coordinates and activates the device. The machine hums to life, a blinding light engulfing them as they hurtle through the time stream, the fate of the galaxy resting on their shoulders. Zaxxon leads Edward out of the chamber to the secure vault housing the time machine. He places his hand on a biometric scanner, and the massive door slides open with a hiss, revealing the sleek, metallic device within. Edward takes a deep breath, steeling himself for the monumental task ahead. "Remember, we must tread carefully," Zaxxon warns as they step into the time machine. "Every action, every change, could have unforeseen consequences." Edward nods, his hand hovering over the activation panel. "I know, but we have to try. For the sake of the galaxy, for the sake of peace, we have to try." With a final, determined breath, Edward inputs the coordinates and activates the device. The machine hums to life, a blinding light engulfing them as they hurtle through the time stream, the fate of the galaxy resting on their shoulders. They emerge in a different time, a different place. The air is thick with the stench of smoke and death. The sky is choked with the wreckage of shattered ships. Edward and Zaxxon find themselves on the surface of a war-torn planet, the ground littered with the broken bodies of Zorgon and Cluvian soldiers alike. "The Battle of Xalos Prime," Zaxxon whispers, his eyes wide with horror. This was the turning point, the moment when the Cluvians and Zorgons went from allies to bitter enemies. They picked their way through the carnage, searching for clues, for any hint of what could have driven these once friendly species to such brutal violence. They find it in the ruins of a Zorgon command post, a tattered scrap of paper bearing a single word: betrayal. Further investigation reveals the truth. The Cluvians, it seems, had discovered a rich vein of precious minerals on a Zorgon-controlled world. Rather than share this wealth, they had secretly begun to mine it for themselves, smuggling the resources back to their own space. When the Zorgons found out, they were furious. Accusations flew, threats were made, and soon the two species were at each other's throats. But as Edward and Zaxxon continue their journey through time, they begin to suspect that there is more to this story than meets the eye. They travel further back, to the early days of the Cluvian-Zorgon alliance. They witness clandestine meetings between shadowy figures, hear whispers of a third party working behind the scenes to manipulate both sides. Their suspicions are confirmed when they arrive on the Vidian homeworld, centuries before the Cluvian invasion. There, in a secret underground laboratory, they find Dr. Zorax, hard at work on his own time machine. "You fools!" Zorax cackles when he sees them, his eyes gleaming with madness. "You think you can stop me? I have seen the future, and it is glorious. A future where the Vidians rule supreme, where all other species bow before our might." Edward and Zaxxon realize, to their horror, that Zorax has been using his time machine to manipulate the Cluvians and Zorgons, stoking their hatred and driving them to war. He has been playing a long game, setting the stage for a Vidian takeover. They confront Zorax, but he is too powerful. With a flick of a switch, he summons his armies from across time, Vidian soldiers armed with advanced weapons and armor, plucked from different eras and brought together to serve their mad master's will. Edward and Zaxxon fight bravely, but they are outmatched. Zorax's forces are too strong, his technology too advanced. In a desperate moment, Edward realizes what he must do. "Zaxxon, go back to the council," he says, his voice cracking with emotion. "Tell them what we've learned, tell them to be ready." Before Zaxxon can protest, Edward activates his own time machine, sending himself back to the moment of its creation. He finds himself in his old laboratory on Earth, decades before he ever set foot on the galactic stage. With a heavy heart, he begins to dismantle the machine, pulling out wires and smashing delicate components. He knows that by destroying his own invention, he is erasing himself from history. He will never meet Zaxxon, never travel to the stars, never save the galaxy. But he also knows that it is the only way to stop Zorax, to prevent the chaos and destruction that his mad ambitions would unleash. As the last piece of the machine falls to the floor, Edward feels himself fading away, his memories and experiences unraveling like a tapestry pulled apart at the seams. In the council chamber centuries later, Zaxxon blinks in confusion. He has a strange feeling, a sense of loss that he can't quite place. Around him, the other delegates are in an uproar, arguing about the Cluvian-Zorgon conflict that has suddenly taken a turn for the worse. But Zaxxon barely hears them. His mind is filled with images of a human man, a brave and selfless individual who sacrificed everything to save a galaxy he barely knew. He can't remember the man's name or how he knows these things, but he feels a deep sense of gratitude and respect. In the years that follow, Zaxxon tries to tell others about this mysterious hero, but few believe him. The Council, shaken by the narrowly averted catastrophe, bans all temporal research and technology, erasing any trace of Edward Coleman's legacy. But Zaxxon never forgets, and sometimes in his dreams he sees a glimmer of light, a fleeting image of a man with a time machine, laughing in the face of destiny as... You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.